Joining me now is Lauren Windsor, progressive activist and the executive producer of The Undercurrent. Lauren, thank you for being here. I know you've had a busy week so far. We're so appreciative of all that you've said thus far and all that you have to share with us tonight. Let me just first start with the new sound that your organization or your colleague has given us. There are two parts of this new tape that strike me as concerning. The first is Justice Samuel Alito saying that the media is attacking him because the media doesn't like how they anticipate the court has decided cases and may decide upcoming cases. Was that a window into what may be coming down the pike in the next 2 weeks? How did you interpret that?
I mean, I definitely interpret it as being a harbinger for bad things to come.
Did you get the sense when he was talking about the media and then specifically citing ProPublica, for example, and their extensive investigative reporting about Clarence Thomas, that Alito is reading, I mean, that these stories are very much being shared behind closed doors at the Supreme Court? I mean, his media awareness seemed to be relatively high.
Oh, it's very high. And, you know, he already had a sense of grievance when I first spoke with him in 2023. But it was much more pronounced this year, I think, in the two conversations that both Allie and I had with him.
Can we just talk about the context here? The fact is, you and your colleague both had conversations with the Alitos. For those of us who haven't been to Supreme Court Historical Society events, I mean, is this what happens? Is this what happens at them? Because we now have two kind of bombshell series of reports about conversations, advocacy campaigns that are happening between attendees and the justices on the Supreme Court.
Well, it's interesting. You know, I had actually read that initial report in the New York Times about Reverend Schenck, and that's part of what played into my going in the first place. But, you know, I didn't read that report and think I should become a member now. It really was incited by the ProPublica reporting on Clarence Thomas. And it's interesting that Justice Alito wants to rail about the money taken by ProPublica for investigating, you know, public servants, while Clarence Thomas is not disclosing millions of dollars of gifts from GOP donors. And I have no idea what ProPublica's finances are, but as someone who is an independent journalist, I would imagine that the money that Clarence Thomas has taken probably rivals the budget of ProPublica in any given year.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a good point. What did you hear in Alito's sort of explanation for that? Did you hear, I mean, it almost seems as if there's certainly no contrition, but there's not even an acknowledgement that there was any wrongdoing on the part of Clarence Thomas in accepting potentially millions of dollars in unspecified gifts from conservative donors.
I mean, you know, it's not verbatim, but it's almost verbatim, you know, making something out of any little thing. You know, I don't consider any little thing to be, you know, buying my mother's house or paying for my nephew's tuition or getting a free RV loan. And these are all things that he's accepted from GOP donors. So it would be a much different story if this were just about vacations he was taking with Harlan Crow and his wife and Harlan Crow's family. You know, I think most people would write it off as, oh, it was a trip. Most people would not consider, you know, traveling with friends or associates as being something that's that big of a deal. But that's not actually what we're talking about with Clarence Thomas, is it?
No, it's another order of magnitude, it would seem, and it's been going on for years. I mean, I guess some part of me is surprised that you, not knowing the Alitos, you're just a random member of the Historical Society, is able to even get within, you know, shoulder-rubbing distance of a justice and then draw him into conversation about some of the most incendiary topics in this country, which is the partisan divide. Can you talk, like, how did it actually unfold when you were in the room with the justice?
Well, so it should be stated that in the guidance for the event, the Historical Society says if you broach topics that are before the court, it may be grounds for you to be kicked out. And so there was definitely a deliberative process in how do I approach someone that, you know, not only are judges supposed to be really the height of discretion, the height of, judgment, right? This is the highest court in the land. This is a Supreme Court justice. So I definitely went into this assuming that I was not going to get anything newsworthy. In 2023, I did not get anything newsworthy. But I thought, throughout the year that transpired, the media scrutiny on Justice Alito has intensified so much, and his grievance level is probably so much more peaked that, unlike Clarence Thomas, who did not show up to this dinner, but has been reported to have shown up to it many times, and he didn't show up in 2023, by the way, that Justice Alito would probably attend anyway, even though he was undergoing this very intense media glare. And sure enough, he was there. And I think, it was just something that I can't say what was in his mind. So I don't know if in 2023 he had the same level of grievance and it changed over the course of the year.
Sure.
There's a couple options there. Did it change, or was it always there and he just felt more comfortable?
Was it hard to get him to talk? I mean, he did at the very end of this conversation. He says, "Are you a lawyer?" I think he's talking to Allie, your colleague. I'm not sure if it's you or her. But it wasn't like you had offered any biographical information other than you had a husband who was not in the room. And I wonder why you offered that piece of information. Like, how did you actually get into conversation with him? Did you just go up to him and start talking to him?
Well, so the reason why I brought up my husband was that in 2023, I came with a male friend. So the context of it was we had a conversation after dinner. In 2023, my male friend was with me. He was not with me in 2024. So when I saw Justice Alito solo, it was one-on-one. It was, "Hi there, my husband really wants to let you know that we're rooting for you, that you really have all the grit." And the reason why I said you have all the grit, if it doesn't stick out to people, this was because Donald Trump had tweeted something out about how, there should be more justices like Samuel Alito with the grit that Samuel Alito has. And so I felt like it was kind of a flag, if you will, to Alito, that it was
a safe space for him.
A safe space, yes. I was trying to signal to him very coyly without saying Trump, because it goes back to the way to broach a conversation with someone who has the highest level of discretion. You can't talk about partisan politics. If I had walked up to him and started talking about Joe Biden or Donald Trump, he would have shut down. So talking about polarization was really a way into the conversation that wasn't as aggressive, but also indicative of what I was really trying to get at was, is he acting on bias? And I really do believe that the American people deserve to know, is the Supreme Court so compromised that we do not really have impartiality, the bedrock of our judicial system? I think hearing it from his mouth that he cannot be impartial, that there are things that cannot be compromised.
Yeah.
That needs to be fuel for journalists and for Congress to say, okay, well, tell us, what are the things that can't be compromised?
Well, Lauren, look, you brought us into a room that few people are ever in. And I think these tapes are revelatory, and they are coming at a time of crisis for this court. It is, we're not done having this conversation. Thank you for bringing some of that conversation to our air. We're really appreciative. Thanks for spending some time with me tonight, Lauren Windsor.
Thank you, Alex.